Welcome back to Kingdom Commentary, where we discuss topics and ideas surrounding the kingdom of God, from scriptures to the early church, and how thinking through the kingdom informs wise living for our culture today.
Welcome to Kingdom Commentary. I stumbled a little bit there.
You know, what do I say after that?
We're talking about the law.
My name is Matt Holliday. I'm here with Josh Brindley. How you doing, Josh?
I'm great.
You good?
We just had Chick-fil-A.
We did.
And I feel really great.
It was okay. It was good. We're just picking fights for no reason. Chick-fil-A overrated.
Yeah, a little bit.
A lot.
I like it because I worked there for a while.
You
so
did.
I have. Yeah,
So-
I like it. It's really good.
Okay.
I think it's good food. Like, they do a good job. You know what? You guys seem to be really skeptical. You and some other people really kind of poo-poo on Chick-fil-A a lot. And I don't get it. I don't get where
I don't want to.
I'm not in love with Chick-fil-A, but I think it's good.
It's fine. Like, okay, a chicken sandwich is a chicken sandwich, and I'm gonna eat a chicken sandwich wherever.
That is just not true. A chicken sandwich is not a chicken sandwich. Liar.
But if you're gonna rank them, Chick-fil-A.
Okay, bro.
Okay, I'm not trying to hate it. I'm not trying to hate on it.
Didn't you just say a chicken sandwich is a chicken sandwich?
I'm just saying in
And then
comparison.
you're going
In
to
comparison.
rank
First of
them?
all, weird vibe.
What's weird?
Vibe. Too polished. My pleasure. I mean, come on. I don't know, dude.
Too polished.
I just don't like. I don't trust it.
Too
Today,
clean.
we were at Chick-fil-A, and guess what happened when we finished our sandwich? Guess what happened? A robot came over to take our trays.
Okay, we weren't actually done though. That was just a fluke.
No, but what is that? That would never happen in a Popeyes. And my main argument is that Popeyes gets a bad rap. Popeyes, because it's always attached to like an A&W or a KFC or Taco Bell, and people assume it's like the same level. Popeyes is really, really good chicken.
It's pretty good, yeah.
And it's way better than Chick-fil-A. And everyone who disagrees, when I'm like, all right, have you ever been to Popeyes? They're like, well, no. And I'm like, that's your problem. And that would not fly out of Popeyes. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, you were really surprised when you saw the robot.
We're doomed, bro. If
had
we
heard
can't
of that.
return our trays, what can we do? You know what I'm saying?
You sound like you're
You can't return your cart. You can't return your tray. You got to get a robot to do it for you. I'm just saying.
I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I thought it was strange.
I don't know.
Because I'd never seen something like that. And it was going really slowly. But I think it has to go really slowly because there's people walking around.
Well,
I don't know.
I'm a teacher, for context. I told a room full of middle schoolers that I didn't like Chick-fil-A that much. And they looked at me like I just shot a puppy.
Yeah.
They were like,
That's
yeah.
checks out.
So, whatever. I'm not here to bash Chick-fil-A.
I'm just surprised, I guess.
It's fine.
Because I don't think I've heard Chick-fil-A slander like that.
It's
come
fine.
from your mouth.
It's just like, what? Like, you're not open on Sundays and that makes you... I don't know. I'm hating way more than I can.
I mean, that's another conversation
That's another
entirely
conversation.
about
We'll talk.
Christian businesses and things like that. We talked about that a little bit with Isaac.
Yeah.
It's an odd topic.
It's an
I was just thinking about that. When I was eating, I was like, this doesn't make me feel any different towards this company. The fact that it's like Christian owned and all that. But
Yeah, I don't know. It's
people have
just-
very different opinions about that. They're
Yeah.
like, I'm going to go here because it's owned by Christians or something. I'm like,
Hey, if it's a Christian business, strive for excellence. And by excellence, make your chicken better. Make it Popeyes worthy. Popeyes level. Feed, you know what I mean? Make the stuff
I don't
spicy.
understand the Popeyes thing.
I
I've
just
been
think it's
Popeyes a few
underrated.
times, and
Everyone's always like, oh, Raising
I think it
Cane
was
Dave's
that.
hot chicken.
crazy.
Louisiana. No. While I'm riled up, I feel like I need to do like a little segment every once in a while. Not consistently. Unfortunately, I have Twitter.
That is unfortunate.
I know.
That is unfortunate, yes.
Yep. I don't post anything on Twitter besides podcast related stuff. But I only follow Christian theology related Twitter people. And it's mostly so I can see when they're on a podcast, when they have a new book out, all that kind of stuff, right? And you'd think of all the corners of Twitter that might be, or X, whatever. There's no smooth way to say X, right?
X is so
Twitter.
stupid.
Okay, Twitter. Of all the,
Sorry.
it's good. Of all the corners of Twitter, that would probably be the most wholesome, right? Christian Twitter. Not so.
No, I wouldn't think that.
Not.
I wouldn't think that about any community, no matter what you think.
It just.
Online communities find ways towards degeneracy.
Yeah, that's true. I need. Okay.
Is that too harsh of a word?
No, I think
Chaos,
yeah, disorder.
disorder.
Tohu.
Online communities find ways to disorder. Yep. Period.
I agree. And I should get off it. I don't interact with anyone on
It's
it.
like with threads,
which is good.
Instagram threads. I just learned that
I've
that's basically
never been
Instagram,
that.
Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't know about it either. I've just seen it.
Yeah.
Because like those posts will pop up where it's like, view it with threads, and I'm like,
Yes.
no.
Yeah,
thanks.
every time. It's not worth it. Not worth the data. It's going to take up space. Every once in a while, there are theological or church-related or whatever arguments that cycle through Twitter almost annually. And people argue and come up with new things, and there's like new trends that everyone has to say something about. And I'm not really here to talk about it because I think people can find that themselves. I'm not here to drop opinions. I'm about to contradict myself.
Except with Chick-fil-A.
That was an accident. I was just fired up because of that robot. However, every once in a while, it makes me depressed, and I have to realize this isn't the real church. These aren't the real whatever. This is just an online platform where people are their worst version of themselves, and that's not really who they are. And that kind of helps. But in the last 2 days, everyone is posting about a debate that just happened in like a Christian circles or whatever. That was like, is interracial marriage okay? And it was a huge debate. And the guy who believed it wasn't okay said that people with a high IQ thought he won the debate, but people with a low IQ thought he lost the debate. So I'm not here to talk about that. I'm not even going to mention the guy's name because it's not worth the airtime. I'm just like, how is that a conversation? It was irritating to see that topic even being discussed today in online.
There was that, is it Channel 4?
Channel 5.
Channel 5.
Andrew Callahan.
Channel
best
5.
journalist.
Channel 5 did the episode about the, it's like Return to the Land or something like that. It's like an all-white community.
I saw that. I didn't watch it, but yeah.
And I think that's one of their things where it's like they're trying to keep like pure European.
Dude, is racism coming back? Is that something that needs to be addressed? That like
I mean, it never left. Bro.
That's a great point. It never did. I thought it was subtle, and I thought it was intentionally subtle. But now it just seems like hip again, and that's what bothers me. You know, like people before, they might be racist, but they're never going to say that they are. And now it's like, why are people saying that they are? Anyway,
most people are racist because they don't know that they're racist.
Exactly. It's like based on ignorance, right? Not maybe
ignorance
hatred.
Or just gut reaction where they're fearful of a certain kind of person because they don't understand things. They're not used to interacting with a certain kind of person. So they do things that are racist, but then they're like, I'm not racist. I'm not racist.
Right. So that's the kind of racism I figured still. Like, I know, I just didn't think it would still be okay.
You didn't think people would say things
to be mainstream
outright
in their outright
racist,
way.
like,
Yeah.
like
So
against interracial marriage.
yeah,
that is kind of crazy.
it didn't give me a lot
For
of
that to be like an okay thing
right
to talk about.
And you know what? Two people probably have that argument all the time that it just never gets any attention. And it's probably not helping to draw attention to it. So I'll drop it. That was, we need to catch your name, but Matt's depressing Twitter
Oh yes,
feed.
right.
And it's good because it helps me get off of it and realize it's not real. Anyway, you've been watching Conjuring.
Yeah, I like it. Especially the
series.
first one.
Oh yeah.
I had never seen any of them, but there's like the spin-offs like The Nun and Annabelle. But they're all like part of the same universe and they show up in the first two movies. And there's the newer one. So yeah, I've been watching those. They're decent. It's interesting. Wasn't a big fan, as big of a fan of Annabelle.
Yeah.
I feel like it's not as
drop
good.
off at some point, I feel like.
The Conjuring 1 and 2 though, I liked. I thought were good. Especially the Conjuring 1.
Lame claim to fame. I just told you this, but I I like to say I met the director of The Conjuring, but in truth, I was in a large Zoom meeting with him with a bunch of other people, and I didn't say anything to him. But he's a chill guy. He's a Christian guy, and he's interesting. He's got a lot of cool thoughts on movie making.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the first one, you can't really beat the first one. I feel like it's the best one. The new one looks kind of funny to me, but I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe I don't know anything about it. I kind of forgot it came out.
Before we jump in to the law, we had some questions.
Yeah.
More questions. I know we did a whole question and response episode, but as we get more questions about different episodes, I feel like it's nice to go back and answer them and think about more, especially with the kingdom. And I got 2 questions from Carol. Shout out Carol.
Carol.
One of them is, if the kingdom has come now, and by his stripes we are healed, and Jesus went around, and in addition to just announcing the kingdom, he healed people, cast out demons, healed the sick, brought the dead to life, as all like showing what his reign is like, what God's reign is like, and God's reign is here. Then why in the church do we not see as much, if any, healing the sick, casting out evil, and bringing the dead to life?
Something I wonder a lot.
Yeah.
It's something I wonder when we talk about where in the world the church is, and like, I think honestly there's a lot of like superstition and skepticism about all this kind of stuff, and like it's hard to believe that any of that kind of stuff is real, because I think
like healing or exorcism.
Well, like in the modern day, I think there are so many examples of manufactured like miracles and things like that.
Con men.
Yeah, well, my mind goes to like those there's some big mega churches that are guilty of this, where they manufacture an experience, and it's like employees of the church like make things. It's kind of like a misdirection. It's like a magic show kind of. And it's like when there's such elaborate schemes like that versus like, I don't know, I've never been a witness to something like miraculous, and so it's hard to even characterize what that would look like. But we have these stories in the Bible, and you're like, when I read that, like, and then I try and apply that to my life, or like, what does, that's where it starts to become tricky. Yeah, I'm very curious what your thoughts are, because I didn't grow up in like a very charismatic church, and I know like spiritual gifts and sort of like miraculous things, and like praying for that, and sort of like emphasizing that aspect of Christianity is more emphasized.
Very.
And so I'm sure you might have a different perspective on that.
Yeah, but I'll just kind of say I don't have an answer to this question really, but to just talk around it. I grew up in a very charismatic church, basically Pentecostal. When I was younger, mostly. Today, church is still charismatic, but less so in style. And it was sort of expected that when you prayed for people, there would sometimes be healing or miracles or something like that. Maybe not dead to life. That might be extreme, but smaller things. And that exorcisms were definitely real, and that was like a very expected thing. I'm actually really appreciate that. A lot of parts of that, because I still believe that stuff is possible, and I still believe that stuff happens. And I am glad that I feel like it's normal in a world that's so materialist and 21st century, like only scientific, like no beyond. Nothing beyond is possible, and we know that now. That feels almost like narcissistic and ethnocentric, because like you said, in other countries and stuff, there is maybe more comfortability with it, and it's easy to be skeptical, and maybe sometimes it's right to be skeptical. But I do think there's like this, like, oh, we are the Western civilized ones, and we know now, as if they didn't know then,
right?
That things that someone coming back from the dead wasn't possible or whatever, and they were easier to dupe than we are, or something like that. I think that's a little bit, and I'm glad I don't have that framework as much. And I think I don't want to be that 21st century ethnocentric guy, like who thinks this time we have it more figured out. At the same time, I think that's an important part of Jesus's ministry. Same time, I think it's important to notice in my Pentecostal tradition, it was almost like if it didn't happen, there was something wrong.
Right.
And that I have a hard time with for a few reasons. Like one, for Jesus, these were signs, is what he calls them, of the kingdom breaking in. But it wasn't the full manifestation of it. Because like in the full manifestation, we will have renewed bodies that will not die and not be subject to death, like Jesus's renewed body, right? So we don't need so any healing or whatever now is temporary. It's a sign pointing towards the reality that's going to come someday. And and that temporariness is good. It could be good, but it is temporary because that person will die again or die later as well. And so there's no like ultimate, like we need it fixed now. Just like any good political shifts that are made are temporary, and will probably fall back again as we await the reality that comes one day. And the other is, I think, in reaction to a materialist worldview, and by materialist I mean like not like greedy, but like the material is all there is. I think sometimes we can fall into like a dualism, and I've seen some Pentecostal churches fall into like a dualism where it's almost like N.T. Wright talks about how he doesn't even like the word supernatural, because the word supernatural sort of presumes that the materialist view of the world is the natural world. And when and that's how the world is without God. And then when God steps in and does something that breaks our laws of physics, that is beyond what's natural. And that's so foreign to how the biblical authors thought. Like they were very much like order and love and life is natural. Death and chaos is unnatural. And we live in an unnatural world. And when Jesus comes spreading his life and love and it heals people or whatever, that's him spreading what's natural, not supernatural. And whether that comes through a doctor and chemo or whatever, or through a very dramatic thing that we can't explain, both are equally God bringing the world into alignment for what it's supposed to be. And I think if we assume that one is more God than the other, we fallen into this dualistic natural supernatural framework that the Bible didn't have. They had a very much more like sacramental view of the world, where the world is supposed to be a certain way and it's not that. And when it's brought back into order that way, it's good. Whether that is dramatic, whether it fits our laws of physics or not, it's all God working toward it. But again, I'm not really answering the question. I'm just talking around it. In my theology, I think there should be more of that, and I don't see it. So I don't know why. Yeah.
It makes me think of I can't remember what the quote is. It might be "For the Life of the World"
By Shmemon.
Yeah, it might not be, but I remember reading about the end of what prayers are for. Like, a lot of prayer is done for solely like the person involved, but not necessarily like inspired to glorify God. And I think when you have the idea of miracles and prayers and things like that, like praying for bodily healing or for someone to like feel like peace and things like that, it's like prayer isn't primarily really in that case anything to do with God. It's kind of like trying transactionally to grab something from God as a blessing. But when you look at the Bible and like you said, signs and all of these miracles are to refocus humans on God or to indicate that God is working in some way.
Yeah.
And that's like pretty consistent. I think of like Acts and things like that. It's a lot of like reprioritization of like, this is what matters, or like actively trying to steer people into a better path.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like, if the intent is, I don't know, for something miraculous to happen, like where is the end guided towards? Is it guided towards to God, or is it guided towards only the ends of feeling like my leg is better?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
something
totally.
like that. I don't know if that helps, but it helps to frame it a little bit for maybe why I read some of the passages in the Bible and I'm like, that seems to be the context, or that seems to be the understanding here, why this is like important to tell and recount. So
Yeah.
again, I feel like I'm kind of dancing around the question because I don't know.
And
Like,
it's a sensitive
I don't
topic.
have a good
If
answer.
If someone's suffering and has prayed for a long time,
Yeah,
it's
and
like I can't.
or they
I think
don't
it's
get
important.
better. Like,
I actually think, yeah, I think it's important not to give a clear answer
or yeah,
sometimes, and not be like, I don't think it's because God's mad at you. I don't think it's because God doesn't want to heal you, because God wants everyone to experience life and flourishing, and we'll bring that about eventually.
and we don't always get like a satisfying answer.
Yeah, and I don't think it's because you don't have enough faith. I think that's a dumb.
Yeah,
Sometimes people say.
well, Jesus actively dismantles that
Yeah,
idea.
yeah.
The whole faith like a mustard seed.
Yeah. We had another question about prayer, but that one I think will take us down a long rabbit hole. So maybe we save that one for another time. But we do have one more from Carol that I liked when I told you. You squinted and acted like you had never heard it before, which I always think is interesting because again, we come from different denominational, traditional circles. And it is pointing out that we talked about salvation in the Kingdom of God series. Salvation being saved from the kingdoms of the powers, the empires of the powers, enslavement to the gods, into the kingdom of God. And it's God saving us from them into his reign. And she said, I had always heard it saved from God's wrath. Or, as John Piper's website talks in Desiring God talks about, saved from God, by God, for God.
Yeah,
and
that concept is crazy.
Give me your initial reaction, and then we'll dissect it a little bit.
Well, because I mean, from our series and understanding the Old Testament,
yeah,
there's very much this emphasis on there being something wrong with the way that things were supposed to be ordered, and that not necessarily being that like God is actively involved in making people's lives worse or distributing wrath as a result of people's allegiances changing. It's like a distortion and a perversion of this order that God wants. And I don't think it's his desire to then be like, well, now I'm going to hand you over because like I want to.
Yeah, it kind of comes...
Or like that's the natural, like...
It frames it like God set up this place called hell. And he's going to send people there.
Yeah, and it's like we're over the trap door, and
he's the one who's going to pull the lever.
He's going to, right.
But then he does something so that he can save it from himself.
Right. He didn't intend for creation to be over the trap door to begin with.
Yeah.
So like, why would it be us being saved from God? It's us being saved from the priorities that aren't God.
Yeah.
That's how I understand it. So it's God shouldn't be like, he's not aiming to be the punisher. He's not aiming to save us from himself.
Yes. And I think that, I mean, the word salvation comes from the Exodus story. And it's God saving a people into his reign from Pharaoh and the gods of Egypt, not from himself in Egypt. Not even from himself causing the plagues or anything like that. He's saving them from an evil power that distorts reality. And it's not God that is going to accuse us. I mean, it's the accuser, the Satan, that is enslaved humanity that we're saved from. So I think saved from God is a really actually distorted, non-biblical idea. It distorts who God is. It can also play into this feeling of like God was angry before the cross, but now he's loving after the cross, which is not only a bad theology of the cross, but a bad theology of God. Like God is unchanging. And if God is unchanging, his love is consistent before and after. And his desire for all to be saved is consistent before and after. I think God's wrath is something we don't have to talk about right now. But I think there's a big misunderstanding about what that is, too. And I think the Law series gives us a perfect segue. It does, into talking about what God's wrath is, because it sets a context for what that term means. And it's not just, I hate you and I'm going to send you to hell, or I'm angry at you and I'm going to send you to hell because you don't believe in me. or because you aren't trusting me or something. It's way more precise, and I think we'll get to it as we go through. So I'm excited about the law series.
I know
don't
you
if
have
tell-
been.
and
Started talking about it, and you're really excited. So.
yeah, and I think my goal is to make you as excited as I am, and to make you as excited as I am, because I think it is way more interesting than we think it's going to be. And I think part of the problem is even just the word law sounds boring, and that we've all tried to do daily Bible reading,
True.
and when we hit those laws, man, that's when you give up. You know,
Yes.
that's when it's over. So I'm gonna make it more exciting.
Okay.
I'm gonna try my best. First, shout out to 4 books that are gonna help us today. 1, Inconsistencies in the Torah by Joshua Berman. 2, Bearing God's Name, Why Sinai Still Matters by Carmen Imes. 3, Reading with Torah through Torah, or is it reading through Torah with Understanding Biblical Law, Reading with Torah through Torah by Drew Johnson. And 4, The Lost World of Torah by John Walton. We've been going through those Lost World books. So I think all of those will help us out today in different ways. And you know what? I'll throw in there. What if Jesus was serious about justice by Skye, Jethani? Gave a good metaphor I think we'll work with as well. And I got some notes. I have 1 note on each page, so there's not as many notes as you think there is. But I want to start with this idea that humans are made in the image of God. Hopefully not that controversial of an idea. Within Christianity, it's pretty foundational, pretty central. But one thing Skye Jethani points out is the word image in Hebrew, is the word tselem, is the word for an idol, statue, right? So if you were to live in Canaan, and let's say your god is Baal, right? And you're like, I really want to worship the god Baal. He's the rain god. I got some crops. I want some rain. Time to worship Baal. I need to love Baal so that he will love me. I need to show my faithfulness to Baal so he will show faithfulness to me. What are ways I can express my faithfulness to Baal? You take his image, you make an image of him, and you make it out of wood, you can make it out of stone, and you treat that image well. Because that image, they know that image isn't Baal. The Baal is beyond that image in their belief system. I'm not treating him like he's a real person or a real God, but you know what I mean? But he's represented by this statue. So when Baal's hungry, we give him offerings. Maybe we even give him money. If Baal is naked, we clothe him. And you can even make little knit clothes for your God, your idol statue. You bow and treat him with respect, and you care for them. And in the Jewish Bible, in the Hebrew Bible, you do not make any images of Yahweh, of God, because human beings are the image of God. And the way you love God is by loving his image, right? So if you want to treat God well and express your faithfulness and love to God, then when his image is hungry, human beings are hungry, you feed them. When they are naked, you clothe them. When they are vulnerable, you protect them, right? And in showing love to other human beings, you are showing love to Yahweh, to God. And there's that sort of logic that underlies what the Torah is. That is, that, as Skye Jethani says, the most important thing is people. And that sometimes some Christians would kind of confront him when he said that and be like, isn't it God and then people? Because Jesus says, love God with all your heart, mind, soul, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. As if it's sort of like command number 1.
Yeah, right.
Command number 2, right? And he's like, those are the same command. Like, you cannot do one without the other. To worship God and respect God and love God, it means you are loving your neighbor. And to love your neighbor, you are expressing faithfulness and love to God. And it's like John says, if you say you love God, but you don't love your neighbor, you are a liar. You know, that is not how it works.
Yeah.
There's even like a theologian, I'm trying to remember who it was, that was like, you only love God as much as you like the person you like the least, which is just provocative and like makes it, I don't know, but especially in action, like that is, you take care of the vulnerable. And the idea that you create right relationships with people and you treat them well is what the Bible calls righteousness. It's not being morally perfect, it's being righteous. I think that's so often what we have in our head. Like, he's a righteous person, he does everything perfectly. It's
Yeah.
not that. So we have a right relationship with each other because I take care of you when you need it, you take care of me when I need it. And we do good by each other. We do right by each other. We're righteous. And justice is the doing right by somebody else. So these words, righteousness and justice, in Hebrew, they're very related. They like come from the same like idea, and they're used almost interchangeably. And in Greek, they're the same word. So they'll use one word to describe both. So the idea that like, I'm going to do right by you, you do right by me, we got to do right by these people. We bring justice, we bring righteousness to each other. The idea of the Torah happens within a story. Like the biblical law comes within a story. So we also talked about the fact Torah does not mean law.
Right.
It means like instruction or teaching. And I think maybe we can just use the phrase biblical law, because biblical law allows you to keep the word law, but it shows that it doesn't mean the same thing as law, you know?
Yeah.
And let's just work with that a little bit. So biblical law comes within a story. God sees Israel, and Israel is enslaved to Egypt, and God does right by Israel and brings justice by setting them free. Then God initiates a covenant relationship, which was pretty common between kings and nations at the time, where like there was one person who was more powerful. He promises to protect this people if the people show devotion to him. And it's almost framed like this marriage covenant, where there's faithfulness and vows in both directions after he saves them from oppression. And they show their faithfulness to him, he'll show his faithfulness to them. And this is called the covenant. And then the terms of the covenant, the vows, are that God will protect them, cause them to flourish, cause them to be an Eden-like people. And they are to do righteousness and justice to God and to each other. And that's how they express their relationship. And that, I think, just by itself is the context of these laws. So, and it's an important framework because American laws do not exist within that context.
Yeah, not at all.
When we think of like, why do we have laws? They're like, well, so we don't kill each other and to mitigate bad things from happening.
Yeah.
But that's not the story that this is in. So they are not statutory laws. They are not laws that are legal codes that they refer to in court and they get really precise about like, oh, we have to make a new law because this is a new situation. You know, people are talking about AI is new and is unregulated, so we got to create all these new laws about how to like regulate it the right way. Instead, this was common law, is what Joshua Berman calls it in the ancient Near East. And common law isn't a list of legal statutes. Common law are examples of wisdom meant to form a community's imagination to become a certain kind of people. It's examples that you internalize. And as you internalize those examples, it creates a community to be formed into a wise people. So biblical law is communally formative, not prohibitive. It's not focused on what you can't do. It's trying to shape you as a person. And a lot of times I think people even go back and they're like, the first law was don't eat from the tree or whatever in the garden in Adam and Eve. But that wasn't the first thing God told them to do. The first law was eat from all of the trees, flourish, like enjoy life, enjoy creation. And then the second one was, except for that one. And I think the point in these laws is they're trying to form Israel into a just people through these examples. And it goes way beyond what the list of rules are. It's, can you become a wise, just people together, a certain kind of people, specifically centered around protecting the vulnerable. And most of the laws are about protecting the vulnerable. And I think sometimes we miss that. Even we can be like, some of the laws are really strict and there's a lot of like death penalty, and that makes us really uncomfortable. For example, if you cheat on your spouse, you could be stoned to death.
Yeah.
And we're just like, that sounds wrong.
Or,
you know,
kids that disobey their parents.
Parents could be stoned to death or something like that. And Drew Johnson addresses pieces of this. One, he to give some context, he doesn't make it completely comfortable, and I don't think we need to make it completely comfortable more than like we shouldn't just read it out, to make ourselves feel better. But one thing he says, if you think about the fact that these were given to them in the desert, there are no prisons. And you have someone who's like a serial killer. What are you going to do? If you can't put him in prison, what options do you have? And if he's going to try to kill everyone in the camp,
Stone them.
you either kill them or exile them from the camp.
Right.
It's sort of like you're in he gives the metaphor like you're in a space station and there's a
So
limited
isolated.
oxygen supply.
Yeah.
You think about it there, and they have women and children, and one guy starting to go crazy. How many options do you have? You don't have a place to put him. You either let him out into space or get really creative. And that's a little bit of the context here. And some of those strict laws are still about protecting the vulnerable in the community. Even like the strict ones we might think are like being drunk or a glutton could cause exile. And you're like, that seems excessive. Like, what if a guy just has too much to drink? But the idea is like they only have a limited food supply. What if someone eats all of your food and drinks all of your wine and you have no calories for that year and you are going to die? Like, we need to cultivate wisdom around how we are responsible for each other. The other thing that is worth pointing out is that rarely ever was exile or the death penalty ever actually carried out. And that's how common law works. It's not this happened and so we have to follow the law exactly. It's this is the weight of this wisdom principle example. And you have to, in your context, wisely think through how to initiate it. And maybe it would be exiling someone or sending someone to their death at this time in the desert because of the safety of the community. But most of the time it wouldn't have been. But it would have carried the weight of like, this person is going to kill us all if we don't figure out how to get their food or alcohol consumption under control.
Yeah, it feels adaptive.
It's adaptive.
I know there was a lot of reference to that in a book you gave me. It was
Nonviolence by Preston.
I think it was Nonviolence. It talks a lot about the adaptability of God to meet his people where they're at.
Yes, yeah.
And like what you're talking about with the desert, there's a lot of things that it's like this group is already kind of prone to doing all kinds of crazy things.
No, that's so good.
As soon as they get out, like one of the first things they do is complain about the food that they have is like not like the food they had in Egypt, even though they were being like oppressed and enslaved. And that doesn't stop. I mean, all the examples, right? They're as they're established or as they're wandering, as they're establishing a kingdom and all of that, as they get a king, that changes things.
Totally.
So
yeah,
that helps me contextualize when we think of the law. We do think about a lot of the things where it's like, ooh, that would be like an oppressive way to live, or ooh, that would be like a hard way to live. But I think too, understanding it in the context of these people and the culture and the cultures around too.
Yes.
And like society as a whole, which is the world, the understanding of the world and its dynamics at that time versus now.
Totally.
Is very, very different.
So this is like a foreign historical document, and to treat it like that rather than what we think of today.
I mean, it forces you to think about unpleasant things that people would just live with every day. Not that those things are
as if we're
good.
So morally superior and all of our iPhones don't come from children in the first
right.
We ignore that.
Yeah, that's
and
a good way to
act as if slavery is over, so we never think about it.
Right.
And we're like, how did they have slavery at that time? When most of the laws about slavery are very much trying to protect the dignity of indentured slaves, and which didn't necessarily correspond to modern slavery in the first place, but not to downplay it because it was still significantly terrible.
Yeah.
But it was very different.
It's the same way that we talk about the way Paul approaches slavery.
Yes, yeah.
It's subtle and breaking down.
Subversive.
Well, maybe not even subtle, but breaking down the foundations of which all of these things lay is the first step he takes to then pushing a culture of the early church towards not having slaves.
Yes, or women.
And defying societal norms and things like that.
Or women, where he'll quote like the Aristotle household codes, and very much like, this is our culture. This is the roles men and women have in our culture, but then subvert them completely at the same time, and push toward the ideal, and which is like this garden ruling together picture, just like with slavery, and you could argue today like maybe it's unethical that everyone drives a gas car and contributes to the death of our planet. And would someone come in and just be like, you have to all give those up right away? I mean, maybe, but it probably wouldn't work. And there's sort of like a pragmatism of meeting you like and being like, what can we do now to push toward the ideal? And the Torah is not a list of divine, unchanging commands that everyone is supposed to live through all the time. It's within the context of historical Israel in the desert. How can we push you toward the goal? And Jesus says this as much when he's like, for example, Moses allowed you to get divorced in the Torah. And there was wisdom in limiting divorce in how he framed it. But the ideal is no divorce at all. The ideal is marriage that stays together. And unfaithfulness, causes divorce. And that's, Jesus acknowledges and accepts that. But he's like, that's not even the ideal. The ideal is the garden. And the Torah are wisdom principles for in your very messy context. How do we triage? How do we find a way to push you toward the ideal? Which is why, again, it's not statutory law. It's not like a list of divine rules. It is how do we communally forge our imaginations for how do we care for the vulnerable in our context. With slavery, like if you abuse your slave, you have to let them go. That is part of the Torah wisdom. And like, instead of just following that, like, what is the wisdom principle behind that? Like, what are we supposed to realize about the image of God in another person behind that? So even the biblical law punishments are supposed to be wisdom principles, not just like they were hardly ever executed the way that they're described, but they show the severity of certain sins that they're supposed to shape their moral imagination.
So then I have a question. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if this is an appropriate term or I don't know. I'll just throw this out there.
Go for it.
In a way, I would say like the way that we live now as Christians is sort of a transformation and a modern Torah.
Yes, totally. I mean, we're going to get there for sure when we get to Paul too. But yeah.
Does that, I guess I wanted to get like a temperature check on saying something like that, because
we will get there. But I think for Paul, like he is clear that the Torah is good because the Torah are wisdom principles pointing you toward the ideal. But for Paul, he's very aware that listing examples of the ideal does not give you the ability to perform the ideal. And he believes the Spirit is the thing that gives the moral wisdom to be able to live out that ideal for real. Didn't mean to rhyme. But actually do it as a community and become the kind of people the Eden people that God wants the people in relationship with him to be. And all humanity. They're given in the context of Israel. They're not applying to everyone. They're applying to this family that agreed. They're expressions of faithfulness to God. They're not a way of earning a relationship with God because God starts that relationship
that's a good distinction.
By saving them from Egypt. But once they're in a relationship, it's a way of expressing faithfulness, like your wedding vows. And I don't think we should say anything about Torah that we wouldn't say to like a partner about their wedding vows. Like I've heard Christians say like, the law is a burden and I'm so glad it's gone. And it's like, would you tell your partner, oh, our wedding vows are such a burden and I'm so glad they're gone. And your wedding vows, they have prohibitions in them. They might even have consequences in them. But their main goal is not to prohibit you from doing bad things. Their main goal is to describe, like shape your imagination for the potential for the love you have for your partner. Like they're supposed to form you into one couple, one flesh or whatever. And that is what they're for. And I think the Torah is not a list of things not to do. It is examples of faithfulness, of justness, to form the imagination of like what our relationship can be between Israel and God. And that's the context. And they're very subversive. Like the Code of Hammurabi is another ancient Near Eastern common law code. But it played a little bit more into like some of the power structures of the day. And the Torah will take and quote the Code of Hammurabi. And the Code of Hammurabi was definitely first. But then it will subvert it. Like it'll take like an eye for an eye is a classic Code of Hammurabi, and tooth for tooth and all that. It's a way of saying like someone hurts you, you can hurt them equally, opposite Rex Talionis, but actually limits the violence because like all you have to do is read Judges to see like a lot of times someone would kill one person and you go kill their whole family. And this would be a way of saying like, no, you're only allowed to kill them, or you're only allowed to respond to them. And then the Torah will take that and apply it to a slave, which would not have applied there. And like that is an equal to you in retribution. And then most of the time, like for example, you poke out someone's eye, they don't actually come poke out your eye. And there are even like people who are like rabbis that are kind of sarcastic, like, what if the person who pokes out your eye only has one eye? Then are you making them blind, or are they already, And they're like, but that's not the point. A lot of times they'd be like, okay, what is an eye worth compensating? You have to compensate that financially, or come up with an equal
sounds like a question the Pharisees would have asked Jesus.
Yes. So what what the rabbis are always doing is they're looking for the wisdom principles behind the examples.
Yeah.
And how do we faithfully apply those wisdom examples now in our context? Not just what does the law say? Let's do that.
Or let's make another bullet point under this law so that we have the exact right thing, where it's like this general sort of guidelines to push our life in a positive direction rather than an exhaustive list for every situation.
Yeah. And I think
that some people don't actually even
ever have the hour counter. But I think there's something like if you see your neighbor's goat walking away, you have the moral responsibility to return it to him. What's the wisdom principle behind that? How is that supposed to shape the imagination of the people? And then obviously it's not like, oh, I saw this dog walking away, and it doesn't say anything about dogs. It just says go.
Yeah.
No, that's not how you read it. It's when you read it, you're supposed to think, oh, what is the wisdom behind this example? How do I live more as a person within this community so that the whole community can become a community shaped by the wisdom that's shown in this example? So that's how biblical law works. It's always embedded in narrative. That's important too. Often they'll have stories that tie into the laws and then stories again. And they're supposed to inform each other. And you get wisdom from the stories and from the rules, or whatever you want to call them. They're not really rules. They're more like, the examples. And then biblical laws are often patterned together. And you get the wisdom by reading all of them back to back. So Drew Johnson has this example. One of my favorite laws in the whole Old Testament, Deuteronomy 25:11, I think. When two men are fighting, if the wife of one of the men comes and grabs that man by the balls, you cut off her hand and show her no mercy. Weird law, right? For the longest time, I was like, what could that possibly mean? What kind of wisdom could there possibly be there? We have a mutual friend who made that his Instagram bio, Deuteronomy 25:11, and people were just like, oh, it's a Bible verse. That's cool, temporarily. But that's a weird rule. And he's like, that's a very implausible situation as well. That's like, how would you even do that? That probably happened like once, and someone was like, I gotta write this down. And never happened again. But like, okay, before that is this story of these like 4 Canaanite, like Amorites, Amalekites, one of those, come and attack the back of the group of Israel as they're wandering through the desert, and attack the lame and the elderly because they're like the ones behind. And then Israel defeats them in the whole story where Moses like holds up the staff and everything like that. But it's like this example of attacking in the most vulnerable spot. And then there's law about grabbing the, and cutting off the hand. And then there's a law about not being unfair if you're vending and you have these weights that are like, how much does your item cost? Not like messing with the weights to trick the vulnerable or the poor. And he's like, those are grouped together on purpose. And we read them Like they're completely separate laws.
Mm.
He's like, I don't think they would have thought any of those and that story are completely separate. They would have looked at them all as a unit and said, what is the wisdom principle tying all of these together? And he's like, the conclusion, like that many rabbis had, was don't attack the vulnerable. Don't pinpoint the vulnerable weak spot of someone and use that against them. Whether that is a man and his privates, whether that is the back of a camp where the weakest people are. And he was like, that is cowardly and wrong. Or that's messing with the weights so that a poor person ends up paying more. Don't exploit somebody else's weakness. And that is a wisdom principle they would take from all of those and implement in their life. And they might not follow each one of those exactly as it happens, but they look for, okay, the wisdom principle is it's a serious thing if we exploit someone else's weakness. And if you do that, we have to learn how to address that seriously because we know this wisdom example. So laws are patterned together. They're contextually adaptable. There's like times where there's this time where they're moving into the promised land and there are these women that are like, there's a property law that doesn't apply to us because it only applies to the sons, not daughters. And they come before Moses and they're like, can we add a law that applies it to us? And he goes before God and God's like, yeah. And then they add a law because they asked. And the idea is, again, it's wisdom literature. And as new circumstances and new contexts arise, how do we keep consistent with the wisdom that's been revealed in these examples, in these stories, and apply them in new situations? And they're different in the promised land than they are in the desert. And they're different when there's a king versus when there's no king. And they're different in the time of Jesus versus because the world changes. And but we don't want to go against the wisdom that's been revealed in these examples. So when they debate, though, what is the proper way to apply it?
Yeah.
That whole practice of rabbis debating and trying to figure out what the best wisdom is to apply, it's called halakha. And often they'll say like there are halakhic debates where they're like, I think this wisdom principle is more important than this one, so let's apply this one here. And the other one's like, no, I think this wisdom principle is more important than this one, so let's apply that one here. And it's halakha. And we might come back to that word because Jesus has some halakha with some Pharisees.
Yeah, for sure. That's what my mind immediately goes to.
Yeah. Halakha also means that some wisdom principles and some laws are more important than others. Like we talked before, the Sabbath is a really important deal to the Israelites, to keep that day holy, to not work on that day. Circumcision counts as work, but you're also supposed to circumcise your child on the 8th day. So what happens when the 8th day is a Sabbath? And they would do halakha, and they came to the conclusion that circumcising on the 8th day is more important than the Sabbath. So it's important to break the Sabbath to perform circumcision on the 8th day. And that was what they came up with. And they're like, so if you do the opposite, you're actually being unfaithful to the Torah. If you decide, it's a Sabbath, I'm not circumcising my kid, you're being unfaithful because circumcision is more important than the Sabbath. So that's like one example of halakha, of like trying to figure out which part is more faithful. And the biblical law applies to different groups. Like there are so many wisdom principles and laws that are just for the priests and don't apply to the rest of Israel. There are so many that apply to Israel that don't apply to the rest of humanity. And it's important that we don't treat them all as universally binding principles or something like that. And they don't demand perfection. They make ways.
That's for sure.
Yeah. They totally assume people will mess up. And they make ways for you to make it right when you do.
Yeah.
Like especially asking for forgiveness, reconciliation, paying more than what you took from someone if you cost them something. Making up for that. What's the word?
Reparations.
Reparations is sort of like a concept that's sort of birthed out of Torah. Like it's always reparations when you wrong somebody, and reconciliation. Reconciliation, and remember, justness, right? Relationships is always the goal. So I think actually one other reason, Drew Johnson points out, like there's no prison system in Israel. And it's because when you wrong someone, you don't just go to jail. You are trying to make it right with that person. So you owe that person, and you're going to prove to that person that you actually respect them and care about them. And that is supposed to create right relationship again. There are some things like sexual immorality, idolatry, murder that are only like death or forgiveness from God or exile. And most of the time God just forgives, especially when someone turns around and asks, like David. He murders and has an affair, and he asks God for forgiveness and God forgives him. and that he just does that. But so God is forgiving and God trusts. Just like, again, you mess up in your marriage vows. If you have a crazy awesome spouse who's super faithful, they might like forgive you and work towards a solution. But if you are so unfaithful and you never turn around, that's when it becomes a huge problem. It's not about breaking or keeping laws. This is an important one. It's about stewarding them, cultivating them, or crossing them. These are the words that they use. Are we cultivating our moral imagination together to become a certain kind of people, or are we crossing against it? Not did you like obey it or break it? Because again, obeying and breaking is a very statutory, modern concept.
Yeah.
But cultivating our moral imagination to be a people of wisdom, a people of justness, a people that protects the vulnerable, which again is why most of the laws are like about protecting the immigrant, the poor, the widow, the orphan. Biblical law includes rituals. And rituals also shape their imagination. And we'll do a whole episode on some of the rituals. But we often find those weird. And another thing we often say is like, it's not about rituals or it's not about rules, it's about relationship. Which again, I think would be like telling your spouse, it's not about our vows, it's about our relationship. And then they'd be like, you trying to break our vows? What are you doing here? Like, of course it's about a relationship, but like it's expressed in the vows, right? And rituals are things that remind you of who you are and what the relationship is.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're weird to us because it's a very foreign culture a long time ago, and we'll look at why. But like having dinner with your spouse, an intentional date night once a week, is a ritual that reminds you to have fun with the person you're with. It reminds you who they are to you, even if you're not feeling it in the moment. It's an important thing sometimes to show that you love the other person. Sending flowers might be a ritual that you do like once a month or something like that. Maybe I'm setting the bar too high. But you know what I mean?
That's ideals.
There are things, practices that it doesn't, like, honestly, it doesn't matter whether you feel super romantic when you do them. It's important to do to maintain
consistency and faithfulness. Yeah.
And I think sometimes people are like, oh, it's not about rituals. It's just about relationship. It's not about the things that you do. That's legalistic. It's about your heart. And I think, again, like, you wouldn't tell that to your spouse and be like, hey, I mean, you would say it is more about your heart than the flowers you send me. If you're sending me the flowers and you don't love me, that's a problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say the heart precedes the action.
But heart precedes the action.
Yeah.
And it's not like the action is fake and as long as the heart is real, as long as the heart's in it.
Yeah.
Like often God will be like, I hate your sacrifices because you don't take care of the poor and the vulnerable. And sometimes we read that and we're like, yeah, God doesn't care about sacrifices, or God doesn't like sacrifices. God just cares about your heart. And it's like, well, that's sort of like saying like, I don't want your flowers because you cheated on me. And it's like, that doesn't mean you person hates flowers. It just means in the context,
those flowers
are
not
are
good
not
flowers.
sincere because you're not showing that you love God by performing justice, same thing, I guess, and caring for the vulnerable and having right relationships with other images of God.
Yeah.
My goal is, at least in this episode, just recontextualize what the Torah is for in the Old Testament. Why the author of the Psalm 119 is like, man, I love you, God. I love your Torah. I love walking in your Torah. I think about your Torah day and night. And it's like, again, telling your spouse, like, I love our wedding vows. I love expressing my faithfulness to you. And I think about different ways to do that day and night. And it involves creativity and improvisation, because the Torah doesn't list every example for every part of life, but it's trying to make you think a certain way about justice, about protecting the vulnerable, about, and some of them are more easy to see how than others, just because the context is so different. But doing that work of being like, how can we think as a community to be formed in this way so we become this kind of people? That's what the Torah is about. So
that brings it around to make it feel much more understandable, not as prohibitive, not as like, why do we even think about this, or why is it even important to have this?
Not that there aren't prohibitions and consequences.
Yeah,
just like again,
just like there are
in a marriage. There are things you're not allowed to do when you're married to someone, and there are consequences when you do those things. But you're trying to live out the wisdom of that relationship. It's not like the other one's like, we created this rule, and now that you do this, this bad thing's gonna happen to you. It's more like the wisdom of like how do we keep this healthy and going? How do we continue a right relationship with each other? And for Israel, that's with each other and with God, intertwined with each other. This is a rambly one.
We're very passionate.
Yeah. I just think it's important, and I'm passionate because I feel like it's again so misunderstood.
Very misunderstood.
Because we are so libertarian in the West, whether we want to be or not, and we just see rules as oppressive.
Yeah.
But that's because we see them as statutory rules, which can be
rigid
and rigid.
And,
They're not flexible. They're not about relationship. They don't assume we don't have a relationship with the government that we consider loving, or we expect faithfulness from them.
Yeah.
To give faithfulness back. We expect the minimal amount of protection and like help, and expect not to like we sometimes just do the minimum to not break the law or whatever. But for them, it's so different. Drew Johnson's like, if statutory law is like football, American football, then biblical law is like curling. They're both sports. That's about it. That's about as close as like they have one kind of driving similarity that we call.
They both yell.
They both have like teams, but like the way they're played, even the whatever the instrument thing. You have a broom. I don't even understand.
I don't know what it's called.
But like
I call it a broom. But.
Different place, different goal, different structure. You might both have like a winner. So like there are some similarities, but they're very, very, very different.
Yeah.
And only after we totally deconstruct sometimes the idea of American statutory law can we understand how common law worked. And a lot of people are surprised when we talk about common law and wisdom principles, and they're like, I've seen people like be like, oh, I don't want to like not take the law seriously by saying like, oh, they could have adapted this in different ways. But I think it's not taking it seriously when we impose the idea of an American statutory law on a Iron Age common law context.
That wouldn't make any sense.
No, it's
our world is very different.
Very different. And it's worth doing the work sometimes to understand what law meant to them, something very different, and how it applied. Like we have some, not many, Israel court proceedings where judges make decisions. And even their idea of a judge is something totally different than our idea of a judge. But someone who goes in and makes something right between people. And they never cite the Torah. They're never like, this is the rule, this is the application. They're always like, well, God has given me wisdom. And I've read the Torah. And because of the wisdom I've gained from reading the entire thing, here's how I would solve this situation, which is very improvisational. The Mishnah and the Talmud are two big books written after Jesus, but they're all halakha, about like rabbis talking about how to adapt different wisdom principles in different contexts. And they don't always agree. And then they're fine with that. And they leave it open-ended because they're like, there are different ways to, we're going to be honest, we got to be humble about this one because the wisdom here is complex and we want to do it faithfully as a community. But this one's not clear. And then they're like, moving on. I think we want things very clear.
I'm curious about the evolution of those into Jesus' time and what is different about that and the Torah and like written versus oral tradition and things like that.
We will talk about some of those.
That's that's a lot.
Totally. Yeah.
Because I think a lot about how Jesus interprets things different than the leaders and how much of that is like, because we talk about how there's a lot of interpretation. There's not the rigidity of what we would think is statutory law.
Right.
But also there is seemingly some like, I don't know, course correction that Jesus talks about where it's like, okay, yeah, but like you've taken it this way too far.
Yeah.
And like how people, so well, I want to like bring that part too, because I think there is some sort of like
correction.
There's correction. Well, I mean, that's just like
let me
Israel over time obviously needs course correction.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a common theme.
So.
So it's like even though they have Torah, they have wisdom to go off of. They don't always do that, and over time that can compound and become what is differently understood by different sects
Yes.
of.
And I don't think
That's more complicated.
I
I understand that we're like laying the baseline down.
Yes,
But
yeah.
I personally am curious about that discourse over time
yes.
into Jesus's time and how that shapes the way he interacts with the leaders.
Yeah.
At
Well,
that point.
I think also there's this stereotype again, an anti-Semitic stereotype that the Jewish people were very legalistic, as if they had this anxiety about following the law, and every time they mess up, they're like, "Crap, I got to make another sacrifice," which is not true. It's not true. They're very much just like, how do we live wisely? We're gonna mess up every day, but how do we do it better? How do we do better at communally? And when people like freak out, it's often like because they're not even trying to do the bare minimum. It's not because they're not doing it perfectly. It's because they're like, guys, you don't even care about the Sabbath. Like you're not even trying to care about it. And what the Pharisees are doing, they're very like Torah observant, whatever. And I'll go in more detail. I think they get a bad rap sometimes, but they're like, they want to make it easier. And a lot of times they add more rules, not because they're trying to be so strict, because they're like, how can we make this accessible?
Fill in some of the gaps, maybe.
Fill in some of the gaps, make it easier for people to follow day to day. And one of the ones that Jesus corrects is like the Pharisees like, you can get divorced for any reason. Like, let's say your wife burns your toast. That's a good reason. Or you just think she's ugly. She used to be pretty. She used to be hot. Now she's not. Like,
another rhyme.
Dump her. And Jesus comes in and says, no, that's not the right wisdom principle to gain from this. The wisdom principle, you look at the garden story, which is part of Torah. It's part of the first 5 books. And you see marriage is supposed to make people one. And that oneness is not supposed to be split. And so he comes and says, except for unfaithfulness, and I would argue some other situation, he's not trying to be, he's not saying you can't leave for abuse or things like that. I'll make that clear. And we can do a whole episode on that if we need to, if we get pushed back on that. But his point is you can't just abandon someone for any reason. You are making the Torah too easy. And then he tells everyone, your righteousness, your justice, your right relationships have to be more sincere than the Pharisees. Like, he's like, actually, they don't take this seriously enough. And sometimes we're like, the Pharisees are all about the law, and Jesus comes in and he's like, guys, chill. But instead, he comes in and he's like, guys, you have not taken God's wisdom seriously at all. You're too chill. And not that Jesus is uptight. He's very relaxed. But he is, he understands the wisdom differently. And he doesn't like the way the Pharisees sometimes make it too easy to follow. Or they prioritize the wrong thing in his argument.
Yeah.
Where like he has this famous one where he's like, you were tithing, but you should have taken care of your parents. And sometimes people are like, oh, Jesus doesn't care about tithing. He cares about taking care of your parents. But what he tells them literally is you should have done both. But you neglected one for the other.
Yeah.
You neglected probably the more important one for the less important one. But he's like, you could have done both. Anyway, I'm not trying to make Jesus sound legalistic.
No,
because the
but
whole
it's not,
point of following the Torah is not legalistic.
Yeah, and it's also, you can't put Jesus's actions in the New Testament in the dualistic point of view as well.
Yeah.
Because there's a bit of both. There's like some where it's like they're really lax, and then there's some where they're like overly legal.
Yeah.
And like, yeah.
So we'll look at those examples too.
Cool.
But anyway, laying groundwork, trying to throw out some misconceptions, recenter why the Torah is good. And we'll continue from there.
It's very interesting stuff.
Yeah. Thank you for listening.
Whoa, real close to the mic there.
If you want more content, we have bonus stuff coming out most Mondays. And we had a cool conversation with our friend about worship recently. You can go check out. We also had one on greed with another friend and if being rich is a sin. And that one, I listened to again, and I'm like, that was a really interesting conversation. I have more thoughts. We should do a part 2 sometime. Yes. But so check out the Patreon. Review, that helps us get more notoriety, and
also comments.
Everything. Yeah, and comments.
I love the comments.
Keep the questions coming. Yeah, good conversations.
I love some of the comments.
I love some of the comments too. All right. Yeah, there's some weird people online, but you know what? That's why online's not real. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. We would love to hear from you. If you have thoughts or questions from today's episode, please feel free to reach out and email us at info@kingdomcommentary.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or rating wherever you found this podcast and send it to a friend. That helps us a lot. Kingdom Commentary Podcast is a 501c3 nonprofit supported by listeners like you. If you'd like to support what we're doing or become a patron, sign up for our Patreon and get exclusive access to bonus content, or go to kingdomcommentary.com/give to make a donation. Finally, Kingdom Commentary is co-hosted by Matt Holliday and Josh Brinley and produced by Will Coons. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.